Okay, so welcome everyone to Cerulean Arts Gallery. I am Mike Kobaz and this is Tina Rocha. We are Cerulean Arts and we're happy to have Michael Rossman on exhibit right now. Michael's been with us almost from the beginning and we're very gratified, that he shows his work here. It's great to work with him. We love his work. So I wanted to let you know that we are open, so you can come and see the show. We're open Wednesday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 6. You just have to have a mask on, and we do limit the occupancy to 10 people, but you're more than welcome to come down. We have a parking lot, which is helpful. And you can also see all the work on our website. So I'll put a link to the website in the chat so you can take a look at that. And everything is available for purchase on the website. So if you're so inclined. And I would ask that everyone stay muted during the talk, Michael's talk portion. He'll open it up for questions later on, and we are recording this and we're going to post it on YouTube after the fact, so you can watch it later, and there'll be a link on our website. So what I'm going to do now is spotlight Tina's video, the Cerulean Arts video, and we're going to start the walkthrough. So Michael, if you'd like to unmute yourself, we can begin. Oh, Michael, you need to unmute. Michael, you want to, okay, there you go.
I'm unmuted. Excuse me, people. Excuse me, folks.
It's Zoom life.
Okay. So marvelous to see all of you. Absolutely marvelous. But anyway, I do have a few thoughts I'll offer you as we start out here, and then we'll offer you a time to make some comments. Usually when we have an opening like this, the artist doesn't say anything. He simply stands there and lets other people make comments about his work, which is really what the purpose of the opening is. He wants to get a sense of other people's impressions rather than his own. He's been living with this work for a long time, and he's happy to have other people comment about it. But things have turned around a bit. And so as we advertise, someone is supposed to speak at this occasion. And since nobody else has volunteered, it looks like that duty falls to me, which I'll try to undertake. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for showing up, and thank all of you. This is the third time that Michael and Tina have allowed me to borrow their walls for an exhibition. And I thank them. I offer these thanks quite sincerely because their confidence and their patience have been gifts of personal trust. And they've been given at exactly the right time that they were needed by this artist. I want to also take a moment to acknowledge that they have provided the same opportunity for many artists to enjoy this privilege by devising a brilliant business plan for their gallery at a time when many art viewing venues in Philadelphia have become financially unfeasible. They are to be congratulated, Michael and Tina, for their intelligent perseverance, their lasting accomplishment, and their commitment to artists and the visual arts. I thank them most sincerely, and I know others who exhibit here, which are on the screen with us today, will share those common thoughts. But as circumstances require, we're ready for an opening, and I'm very happy to meet all of you who attended, even in this mediated way. But in memory of past openings, and in the hope of future openings, to come where we can gather face to face, meet each other, and make new friends and renew old friendships. I have Barbara has prepared for me a glass of acceptable wine. I have my wine ready here, and I also have a few little cheesy bits on crackers here. So I'm ready for the opening, and this better work out, or I'll empty this glass of wine before it does. So while I wish I could share these with you, perhaps at another time, we might try and do exactly that. So Tina is panning the exhibit, as you see, and we call this exhibit 10,000 Storms Part 2. Now, some years ago, we presented Part 1 of this theme of the storm, and I realized then that I had merely scratched the surface of the subject, and I'd merely scratched the surface of what the subject could actually teach me. So here we are again. Here we are at it again. I started to address this subject in small ways decades before that first exhibition. I realized then that other subjects I had engaged with, been working from, they were mostly urban landscapes and interiors, some still lifes. They were imposing restraints on my thinking, the restraints on my gaze. These urban themes and the graphic principles on which they were based also played a significant role in shaping the character of my calligraphy, my marks on the page. And consequently, I thought they were too aggressively coloring the character of my visual thought world. But in addition, this change in subject matter was compelling because of the challenges it posed for me. As someone who attempts to think about life experiences by making drawings while he's in and of this world, this was the challenge I needed. So the activity you see on these walls at the gallery is a consequence of someone trying to expel some constraints that no longer meet the needs of those perceptions that are emerging within him. This fact leads me to the troubling awareness that I must now, and perhaps forever, continue to take up some new challenges in order to retrain my hand, refine my calligraphy, and mature my sight, my gaze. This exhibition is therefore somewhat of a confession that I must go back to school. Consequently, this exhibit has turned out to be a bit of a hybrid event. That's a new word, and I'm going to use it here for this purpose. There are two works in this exhibition from several years ago and two from years before that. But they're important to include because of what they illustrate about the process of making drawings, which I take, I hope you can see, quite seriously. There are, of course, works of the present in the exhibition. And there are one and two here that might hint at a possible future. But all of these works, and I think others to come, can be encapsulated by the following simple statement. If you can mature what you look with, only then can you deepen and enrich what you're going to look for. And in so doing, make visible to yourself the limitations imposed on you by what you're looking at. I got that quote from somebody, and it might have been me, so we'll see. We're going to take you now to the south side wall of the gallery. And Tina, you're doing a wonderful job. Now, on the south wall of the gallery, we've hung a series of drawings composed in circular formats. The circular format is rather new to me. Among these are two groups of 4 works in each group, and you're looking at one of those groups now. These are executed in 12-inch circular formats. This is one of those 4 groups and one of the drawings in that group. This series is contemporary. That is, it emerged through the 4 years from 2016 through 2020. The works are simply titled by numbers from 50 to 59. This is not to infer the sequence in which they were completed. Many were worked on simultaneously, which is one of my constant habits. Insights acquired from one by doing this often drift or feed into other works. The years of these drawings, 2016 to 2020, were emotionally eventful years for all of us. Times grew darker for me during those years, as I think they did for others as well. I cannot be sure, but will not deny that the events of those times may have contributed to that darkness. This, I assure you, was not an intentionally contrived reason for making these works. I am not documenting or illustrating anything here. During this time, I was merely continuing my pursuit of the subject of storms and trying to educate my gaze while working out what my calligraphy might accomplish. These works simply emerged during those 4 years. But from what you can quickly see, you'll know that if I find a subject that sustains me, interests me, I'll produce a series of works from or around that subject. This is also my habit. This is such a series that I've done that way. There are a total of 9 drawings of this size, and they're from these 4 years. The circular format became a home for my thoughts some years ago. Circular compositions first emerged for me when I was working in some backwater locations in Florida. While I was there, I searched for remote places that escaped the attention of developers. And to my pleasant surprise, I found many of them. I went to the swamps in Florida. I was there to intentionally put myself in an extremely unfamiliar landscape, a place that would challenge me to learn a new calligraphy, to better cope with the complexity of a visual world where gravity and the organizational logic of man-made things were irrelevant to the life that occupied these places. There are 2 works on this wall executed from 2012 through 2015. They are titled Captain Forrester's Hammock, a beautiful place that's been reserved just on the east coast of Florida. The other is a place called Alexander Springs, which is a wonderful restored zone, natural zone of one of the artesian springs in Florida. Encourage you to visit it at any time you're in that area. Circular formats emerged during this period for reasons that I've tried to explain, but I've insufficiently explained to you. They relieve me from the notion of the vertical and horizontal sides of the canvas. They challenge me with another geometry that I had never faced before. No vertical, no horizontal, no diagonal truly speaks to the structure of the visual events I'm finding in that landscape. Things morph into circular forms within circles, elliptical forms within ellipses, scale of ellipses turning into helices, other complex tapestries of form that I could never have imagined were I not in that location for a significant period of time. I hope to go back and see it again. And in many ways, these drawings cross one another, feed one another. The storm drawings from Florida migrate to the jungle drawings from Florida migrate to the landscape, to the storm drawings that you see at a later state. And there is one drawing in the center of this wall that's called the Jural Pass, which comes from largely notes I took when I was there and memories I had of the event of being there. The Jural Pass is a very high mountain pass leading from San Moritz to the north, eventually leading the Roman army into Germania, where they fought the Germans during the occupation, the Roman occupation of Germany. The Jural Pass that we were on was in the mid-spring, and we encountered the most intense storm I've ever been in my life in that location. We only made it halfway through, having to turn back and retreat to San Moritz, where we enjoyed another glass of wine and a cozy fireplace to think about what we gratefully missed putting ourselves through. The Jural Pass has special memories for me in that regard. Moving on. We want to take you now to the other wall. This eventually we'll get there. And the north wall is a little different. There are, let's see if I got my notes here right. There are many drawings on this wall, and what we have is in front of you right now is a drawing from a still life subject matter. And this drawing too has some age to it. I did about 12, maybe 14 drawings from a common still life. And this got me started on doing sequential works. As I worked on these, I realized too that there was much more in the tapestry of form that I'm seeing in the subject matter than I initially thought was there. So these drawings opened up another world for me. These were pre-drawings. These were drawings done before going to Florida. But the subject was still constrained in its vertical orientation, and a lot of the geometry of the rectilinear format was influential here. These drawings have a rich background for me because much started here that is, again, playing forward into drawings I'm doing now. This drawing, one of two of these floral drawings, I've included in the exhibition because, again, a little history is needed here when you talk about drawing. It isn't as if drawings proceed 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is as if they move in a sequential, nice sequential way where you can date each drawing. This happened now, this happened next, this happened next. Oh, he's moving in this direction, and so on. When you're making these drawings, things you thought about years ago influence things you're thinking about now, obviously. And things you've discovered now start to remind you of things you've forgotten years ago. Now, in that process, there are other two small drawings here that Tina is now pointing to. These two small drawings on the easel next to the floral drawing are drawings that I wanted you to take a look at. They're included in the exhibition, and you can find them on the website. They're from a rather private group of drawings. I do keep and refine some thoughts for my own reference, and these are two drawings in which I've tried to do that. These drawings are places where items are stored away because there may be a possible future for them. Drawings like these retain thoughts about things I have previously attempted but failed to apply. And also there are tests and trials that help me refine ideas that I eventually, hopefully, will apply correctly. These drawings are also a training ground, and a test pad for new calligraphic experiments. I've asked Mike and Tina to include them in this exhibition so that they might provide someone who visits the gallery with a glimpse into what I think is an important aspect of the drawing process, at least my drawing process. If you come to the gallery, I hope these works might serve you as a type of guide while viewing other works, and I hope you will use them for that purpose. I was working on some of these the other day, and I was talking to Barbara about them, and we were talking about how common this really is amongst people. And I'm sure you all do this. You all have a drawer somewhere in your kitchen where you put items that you know you're going to need, but don't always need all the time. You got a corkscrew in there that works pretty good, but a can opener that only partially works, but you hate to throw it away because your mother gave it to you. Or you have a flashlight with a couple of dead batteries, but not so dead that they can't function. This is like a place where you put things for utilitarian purposes, something you're gonna use and want to use, but just can't find a place for it otherwise. It's not a junk drawer. It's a utilitarian place for the possibilities that something in there will serve your purposes later. That's what these drawings are like. And I hope my metaphor isn't too boring. Nonetheless, on the center of this wall, on the very center of this wall, we have three drawings left to right. These drawings are a group of three works that have also been titled by their time of emergence. These drawings encompass the months of the year just passed, the COVID year. They were done during this year. This is the year that the illness has overtaken us all and so changed our lives, forcing us to meet each other in this remote manner. Again, I did not start these drawings with any intent to make a narrative about that year. However, we have chosen to arrange them in a triptych-like format here. This whole idea of the drawings and the year was a late blooming thought for me. But I tell you now that all were worked on simultaneously, back and forth, during that 2020 year. By centering them on the wall and by hanging them in this left to right sequence, the group does suggest that I have allowed a simple storyline to emerge here. One that suggests the initiation of a storm on the left, then our immersion within it, followed by the storm's passage. I was as surprised by the character of these drawings and the potential message they inferred as much as I was by the 9 circular drawings completed between 2016 and 20 that we exhibited on the south wall. When this happens, I am unable to explain it, but these are emergents from those time periods, not designs of those time periods. And I hope I'm being clear about that. So I thought I would hesitate here for a moment and just have our camera operator pan the small drawings either side of this group. On the left and right of this group of drawings are small drawings. Again, on the website, you can see more details of them. We have a dozen of them here. There are several others that have been executed, sold, and moved on, and still others that I'm not showing. These are simply 4 by maybe 5.5 inch drawings. These drawings were done as I have lived out the last decade or more of my life. Some came from sketches I made when I was in the northern Italian Alps. Some came as I was working in the Cumberland Valley. Some came as I'm looking out the front window of my house at the clouds above the houses across the street. Some came as I stopped my car somewhere along the road because one particular cloud was interesting enough to do that. Some came from a few sketches I made quickly, and some photographs Barbara took while we were cascading our way down the turnpike. These things, again, are starting points for what became more complex works in the future, for the future works. And they are important to me because, again, they reveal something about the process of making the drawings. This is not a casual process. This is a process undertaking to really change how one sees, what one's gaze is about. And it's as surprising to me as it is to anyone who looks at this. I never had any idea that I would make these drawings ever. They're here as gifts to me from engaging in a process that was compelling for me to engage in. And that is the simple fact of what you're looking at. So I'll let people have it back. That's an early statement. I have some other thoughts I can offer you, but it's time for me to shut up and let somebody else have something to say. And I need a sip of my wine. So thank you very much for listening to all of that. I hope you take it with good heart. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. So if anyone has questions, you can feel free to either unmute yourself and ask away, or you can put them in the chat for me and I'll relay them to Michael. So
I just want to say, since I have the floor apparently, that these are very thoughtful, Michael, and also very thought-provoking. And I was wondering if you thought you might want to put them in a book so we could have a collection of them.
No.
And,
That,
and a story.
no. But you could buy them and you do what you want with them after you.
I bought one once and I think it fits into all of these and I absolutely treasure it. It reflects your thoughts. It also reveals the earth and that which dwells therein. So I appreciate them very, very, or this one very, very much.
Wow, you're
I
sweet.
wish I could buy them all.
Well, I'm hoping that some of these do wind up in the hands of appreciative collectors. And I can think of no more appreciative collector than a former student, as you are. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And here's to you, kid.
Mike,
Keep
To
painting.
you. And to you.
Hey,
Mike,
is anybody next? Michael, I have a question for you. In relation to the statement you just made,
Yes.
I'm really curious about your relation to the subject matter. And at what point, and I almost see these drawings as abstractions, but you talk about the importance of the subject. And I'm wondering how quickly you abandon the subject and move into either a subjective or an abstraction where the mark making takes over or something. I mean, what happens? Tell me more about the process, but especially in relation to, I mean, where are these clouds? These clouds are ephemeral things anyway. Why do you need them?
Because they're ephemeral things.
Okay.
Well, that's a smart-nosed answer to a very important question. Now, it's a very important question, right? The answer is I'm not completely sure why.
Okay.
But you would know, Leo, how limited your calligraphy can be, right? Unless you really push it, right? Unless you push it as far as you can. There's no other subject matter that required that kind of push from me than this particular subject matter. And it still requires more. I'm not done with this yet. But to try to draw the kinetic activity of opposing forces rather than the cloud is what the drawings try to do. I'm far away from any success at that. But that is the issue and the real subject behind what looks like weather. It isn't the weather that's important in that sense, but it's what's happening in that arena where forces interact. Simple forces, tension forces, compression forces, shear forces. The whole notion of the torques, the torque, the twisting force, which is so hard to draw, as you know, so hard to get your hands on, which is one of the key forms that infers activity or motion in a work that's static. That helix, so to speak, is a requirement for anyone who wants to deal with the flow of water, right? The lift of air, the explosion of something. This activity of the torus is one of the geometric models that has been attractive for me for a long time because of its potential to speak about living things. And that comes to a large extent out of the work in the jungle. But it is also expanded into this work when I'm in the midst of a snowstorm, in the midst of a rainstorm.
I think you might be in the midst of a trance.
Well, I think I'm in a storm of my own making.
No, I believe there's a trance involved.
Well, thank you for that comment too. It's shut me up, Leo. I start talking.
No, I go ahead. I'm really, I mean, I still am not clear on, on this, the subjectivity that's involved. I mean, perception is subjective. We know that. So you're looking at something and you're seeing things that, no, that are so personal. I mean, I'm thinking no one else would see that. No one else would look at the clouds that you're looking at or look at the plants. And I just, what, I mean, I always thought of you in a way as a realist, but when I look at these drawings, I mean, you're not a realist. What are you?
That's where the trance comes in.
What's your style?
He's in a trance. Huh? He's in a trance.
I don't know, Leo. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a good point that Carol's talking about. It's sort of like once you start your mark making, it is sort of like it becomes a trance-like process. Does that make sense to you, or do you agree with that? Or?
I'm definitely addicted. It's an
Okay.
addiction, right?
Yeah, I get that.
It's
Yeah.
more of an addiction to the process than it is to the subject matter.
Yeah, that's what I'm
An
looking
addiction.
for.
It's more of an addiction to try to train the eye than it is an addiction to try
Right.
to draw.
Okay,
draw
I
a
get
cloud.
that. I understand that now. That's kind of what I was looking for behind my question. Now I sort of get it better. I understand it better.
I have a follow-up question, Michael, that I think relates to that and maybe it's a little easier for your audience to sort of digest your thinking looking process, which is you talked about storms almost by definition are somewhat abstract, or at least the visual component of a storm seems very closely linked to abstraction in my own mind and eye. But you had some still lives that you drew. Am I right? You talked about those
Let me have that language again. Somewhat.
still lifes.
Still life.
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
And-
indeed. We do have 2 samples of still lives here, right?
So just let me follow up, let me finish my thought and then you can answer. So those similarly, I mean, of course, I'm looking at them on a screen and I'm not in the gallery, sadly, but they do not in any way resemble a still life I can recognize. So you have obviously, and I say that as a compliment, of course, not as criticism. So what is that process, which may be a little easier for us to comprehend?
It's not, here's the thought. Let's see if I can frame the thought. Do you know Cézanne's drawings, his little sketchbooks of the landscapes he did around Aix? You know those,
Yes,
those sketch
I
drawings?
do.
You know how you know how minimal those marks were? How small a small number they were, how small in scale they were. There are very few marks in those drawings, very few lines, very few dots. But the inference that he is able to achieve in those drawings is the inference of the entire landscape. The whole character of the place is held in a kind of restrained tension with those marks. The marks are on the surface of the page. They're positioned relative to their proximity, relative to their direction, relative to their scale in relation to one another. But you witness those drawings and you first see their marks on paper. They're graphic statements made by a hand of some man or woman. That's what you're looking at here in many ways. You're looking at an eye and a hand, scanning the field of events and relating a series of marks in certain proximities, locations to one another, certain directions, certain lengths, certain scales, certain angles of alignment, and so forth. Finding those relationships that are not necessarily definitive about subject, but nonetheless real to the eye. They exist as realities in that subject matter. They have not become the leaf, the flower, or the stem, but they are facts of visual information. And from those facts, the structure of the drawing, what it finally becomes, emerges into being what you see. Sometimes parts of the drawing are carried forward into the definition of the object that you might name a flower. One of the things I consistently try to avoid is to draw with the imprisonment of the name of the object before my eyes. If I say to myself, I'm drawing a flower,
Mhm.
I'm drawing nothing but the flower. If I open my gaze to see the field of events and relationships within that field, I'm finding things that I had no idea I could ever perceive, that are the true discoveries for me. Like Cézanne, finding the relationships between those simple marks infers that landscape. Mine are far from that inferential line of thinking, but it's coming along. I arrest the drawing in that process. I arrest it in that process because there's something there I want to retain. So that drawing is much like one of those very small drawings we showed you before. It's a place where I want to retain what I've seen at that moment for a while. Now, I also have the habit, perhaps the very bad habit, some would say, of taking these drawings out of the frame and working on them more from the same subject matter, but at a very different time because I've informed myself about something I missed in that structure of the relationships.
Mhm.
And I changed the drawing. None of these drawings can be considered finished in
Mhm.
that sense that they are pictures of something. These are all in the process. The only way that process can be stopped for me is if you buy the drawing, take it home and hide it from me for the rest of the life. That's the way to end that drawing.
Michael,
I'm sorry to
I
go
have a
on that wild journey, but thank you very much. Yes, hi, Susan.
hi,
Welcome
Michael.
back.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I missed the first 10 minutes,
Uh-huh.
but so if you answered my question, please tell me and we won't pursue it. But just to tie some strings together, I think that it's been made clear that you're essentially drawing what's ephemeral and that you're trying to find the marks to depict that ephemeral thing, whether it be wind or whatever, storm.
Take exception to your word ephemeral. Take
Oh,
exception to your word ephemeral.
Oh, okay. Maybe I am using the wrong word, but non-material things. Is that better?
Better, very material.
So could you explain that then?
It's very material. Those things are real. They are there. They are.
But you can't
reports-
grasp them.
reports
They're
of a
not
physical
objects.
phenomenon.
Okay, so you're not depicting objects. How about that?
Well, if it reflects the placement of some part of that object.
Well, what I was going to ask, and maybe you can find the right words. What I was going to ask is, how did you transition from painting or drawing, I'm sorry, not painting, drawing physical objects like still lifes or landscapes into this idea of drawing wind, of drawing other things that you can't put your arms around, and you can use the right words to describe them.
Okay. If you
Okay.
think so. Thanks for the compliment.
It's really the transition that I'm interested in.
So am I, Susan, and it's happening to me right now.
Yeah.
So it's an event that is exposing itself to me more and more as time goes on. And I'm lucky that I have the time to experience it.
Yes.
Early in my earlier life, there was an experience of such an event. You know, I've always championed, right, process artist, but with some exceptions, more important exceptions than others. I've always been an exponent of Giacometti's process, right? We talked about that
Yes,
before.
we did. Yes.
The only way those works were saved for us is his wife came into the studio and pulled them out and took them away. The only way the sculptures actually existed was that his brother Diego came in, moved them from Giacometti's studio took them over to his and made a cast of them, and then put them back in Giacometti's studio, where he started to paint on the bronze castings of the figures Diego made for him. Diego would come in and take the sculpture away that's already now been painted, you know, researched by Giacometti, right? And put another lump of clay on there, and he would continue to work without stopping. That process, that addictive process, is impossible for him to stop. And it's through that addictive process where you commit to it that something happens that is unpredictable and life-changing. But what is fascinating about it is a total and fascinating surprise to the artists themselves. Total
Well, I
surprise.
understand that. And I really, what can I say? I understand that. And I think it's a real breakthrough to be doing that. But you didn't answer my question, but that's okay.
Well, we can have this
Yes, we can.
intellectual
Another
discussion at a later
Yes,
date, all right?
yes,
We're
we
gonna,
can.
this is not gonna
Yes.
stop, right?
time. Right.
And by the way, that's why it's difficult to date these drawings.
We
Michael,
can have that discussion.
We'll have a
Michael,
discussion. What's up, Mike?
Michael, speaking of process, can you speak about your tools, the paper preparation of paper?
Materials.
Yes, everybody's favorite.
Oh, dear. The question always comes up about materials, doesn't it?
Yes,
Right.
it's,
I mean, in every opening we have, there's always, what did you make that with? How did you do that? So on and so forth. So I prepared something. Here it is. You know, look at that whole page on materials.
that's long.
I'm going to read it.
Oh, no.
Is that okay? I'm going to read this.
Go ahead.
All right, here it goes. This is materials. The materials used are a selection of metal points. There are silver points, bronze, copper, lead, and lead solder, as well as graphite, of course, of various weights. Some of it 9H. The paper is often Arches buff, which some of you are familiar with, but there's a selection of other handmade papers from various sources that I also use. I think of different papers almost like each is a different species of some kind. Each has its unique character, each has its own history, and its distinct quality. Occasionally, I've used drafting vellum. Now, drafting vellum is a 20th century invention. That's a semi-transparent sheet, basically of plastic made from polyethylene. And it takes metal points and hard graphite with the slightest touch. It's advertised as some product that will endure for centuries. And it's used normally by architects and others for technical drawings. But it has its limitations. I've also experimented with a variety of coatings on paper. That's more recent for me. My most frequently used has been a mixture of clear wax, thinned with terpenoid, and infused with various amounts of marble dust. Now, this is not uncommon if you look at the history of drawing. This brush is brushed on or burnished into the paper, sometimes applied in multiple coatings in my work, and sometimes sanded, and that sanding provides it with a surface that really invites a more sensitive and serious or sensitive touch. Irregardless of which media you use for an additive mark, whether you're working in metal point or graphite, that coating of marble dust and the right amount of wax thinned to exactly the right thickness you want is an experiment that I'm doing on a regular basis with many papers. I've always used a variety of tools for reworking and removal, including the obvious erasers of various grits and so forth. But after the paper is coated and metal point or graphite is applied on top of the coated paper, you have a problem of how to modify and correct anything in the drawing. And this can only occur by scratching something off, or sgraffito, sgraffito as the Italians call it. In my case, I use etching needles and dental picks to work some of the work back onto the coated surfaces. I'm quietly learning how to more productively retreat to advance as I draw with this media. I'm trying to make it possible for me to quietly rethink the calligraphy I'm casting out on the page. And I say to myself, it's just a little like fishing. It's like if you go fishing, Barbara and I do a lot of fishing. And if you go fishing, you get the analogy. When you're fishing, you're always looking for something that swims along. In the drawings, I'm looking for something that swims in the relationship of marks on the page. And when you do that, you've got to find just the right lure, when you go fishing. It's like fishing for an old, smart trout. If you've ever gone trout fishing, particularly when that trout is swimming in a shallow stream, you're searching for this thing. Now you've got to be prepared with every lure appropriate for the time when you're out there fishing. And on the occasion when you're fishing, you must sneak up on it. You must sneak up on that fish. People don't realize that when they're fishing or drawing. You gotta sneak up on this stuff. Sneaking up on it, just hoping that the trout won't see you coming, and you must present the lure as so it floats nearby him in just the most natural manner possible, and hope he takes the bait. From time to time, you really do catch a very big fish. But the rest of the time, you're just fishing in these drawings. In these drawings, I do a lot of fishing. I hope that analogy doesn't bore you, but hey, drawing and fishing, there's something in common here. And you really have to know how to approach your prey and stay the hell out of its way, or it'll see you and run away before you can catch it. To draw like that is not so easy to do. You've got to know the environment you're working in. Hey, pardon me for the analogy, but I just couldn't resist it.
Thanks, Michael. I think Judy, you had a question, yes?
I do. I want to say, first of all, the thing that impressed me most of all that you've said today is that you are surprised at the ending of what you make. It's not like looking at a still life and knowing you have to get the banana, the water jug, and the pheasant right. Now, I'm not an artist myself. I just appreciate art, but on both sides of my generation, both my grandparents, my parents, my children, and my grandchildren now are artists of various sorts. And you know that our grandson is at RISD right now, finishing his freshman year and going through crits this week, critiques and evaluations and finals. And it just fascinates me to think that you don't have anything particular in mind before you start. Or if you do, you're just totally surprised by what you end up with. That's what
Seems to be the way it goes. I mean, my experience is that it seems to be the way it goes. And I don't know, but on my screen here, I have two other colleagues from Pratt. I have the astonishing sculptor, Mr. John Pay, looking at me right now. And I cannot tell you, John, how honored I am that you're on that screen. I absolutely am deeply touched by your presence. Thank you so much for signing in. My heart is ready to stop because you're there. And I have Pam Waters, who knows well a history that we've shared as students at Pratt, students of Alexander Costello and Rowena Reed, and so many others that were influential in truly teaching us that we don't really look at a subject without, unless we can really eradicate the prejudices we carry with us to that subject. Getting rid of those prejudices, getting rid of those limitations is the only way you can surprise yourself with something unanticipated. And that is the greatest feeling possible, when a work of art surprises the artist and they look at it and they say to themselves, I didn't do that. That's not something I could have done. Where did that come from? That can't be me. That's the great achievement. That's where it's supposed to go. It's something that happens through you, not by you.
Wow, thank you for telling me that.
Something like that, I think. Of course, I'm elaborating a bit. And I've had, half a glass of wine. See, I'm down to about a third. Barbara, I need more wine. So that would be who knows what I'll say when I get down to that full glass. I might embarrass myself even more. But John, thank you. God bless you, John. How's Insuk? Good? Insuk, good? Excellent. Wonderful. Mark, are you there? Did I see Mark Campbell there? There he is. Hi, Mark. Thank you. Wonderful to see you.
I did ask that question about process and about the tools and so forth. So you could blame me for that. And I didn't set you up. I actually asked it.
I'm glad it came from you, Mark. Mark was dean of the University Arts College of Art and Design, I think it was, for quite a period of time. It's accomplished sculpture and extraordinary work. Keep Mark Campbell's thoughts, keep the thought of Mark Campbell in your mind. And Laura Fraser as well, one of our best figurative sculptors. I'm advertising for you, Laura. I hope you don't mind. Wonderful. Both of them extraordinary artists in their own right.
Laura and I want to advocate for you or give you a pitch for you because we have 6 of your drawings. We live with 6 of your drawings, and we can highly recommend it as a particular kind of lifestyle.
Good for you, Mark. If you want to see them change, bring them back to me, and I'll probably work on them some more. If not, keep them away from me if you want to maintain them. All right.
Well, we'll give you a key to the house, and you can come in.
Anytime. Thank you very much. Honored to have them in your collection, and very good to know that some of them are in the collection of people who understand and want to maintain them as they were intended to be maintained. Thank you, Mark. Good for you. Oh, questions. Aren't they awful trying to form questions, huh?
So are there any other questions for Michael before we end?
Well, I have a closing statement. Would you like to hear
Yes.
would you like to hear my closing statement?
Definitely.
Okay. Well, this will take another sip of wine. This is a story. It's a semi-true story. This has to do with a drawing I offered for sale in an exhibit that was organized years ago. This exhibit was organized way back then. It was purchased by what we judged to be a respected drawing collector in Philadelphia. Eventually, this collector apparently decided it was time to deacquisition some of his collection, and he offered my drawing for sale through an auction hosted on the web. Now, I became aware of this auction by a friend, email from a friend. And I looked at the website, of course, and I saw that the posting of the drawing announced my drawing for sale using the following description. The posting said, item number 34, a 20 by 30 inch skitsy drawing of flowers by Michael Rossman. A skitsy drawing by Michael Rossman. So interested, of course, in the outcome of the sale, I followed the auction for several weeks and eventually saw that the drawing had in fact been purchased. I was surprised but pleased to see that the new owner was a collector in London somewhere. London. A skitsy drawing by Michael Rossman, now somewhere in London. Well, I wondered about that description for several days. Just what does skitsy mean? So I look up skitsy using my iPhone, of course, and this is what I found. Skitsy, from schizophrenic, often changing one's mind, acts a certain way one minute and then completely different the next. Skitsy. Another definition, however, offered this. The definition read, skitsy, doing things very fast and half-assed. Half-ass. due to being on speed, i.e. the effects of speed. Well, those were the messages of Skitsy from my iPhone. So after reading these definitions, a mild anxiety began to arise in me as I reflected on the implications of these thoughts. Schizophrenic, the effects of speed, half-assed. But after a few days of reassuring myself that I had never shown any dangerous signs of extreme behavior, and reminded myself that I had never ingested the chemical agent known as speed, I confess, never tried it. The anxiety then began to fade, but half-assed. A few days of reassuring myself, after those days of reassuring myself that I have never shown any dangerous signs, I'm still left with half-assed. I haven't been able to completely expel that from my list of plausible comments about my work. And the complete eradication of the likelihood that there might be some truth behind those words has in fact become adequate motivation for me to continue to draw and more carefully study the art of drawing. But then I thought, what the heck, what the heck? Perhaps the association of schitziness and mind-altering drugs might just be a help for our marketing purposes. Could it be, I thought, that they might have a positive effect on future sales? Well, collectors often prize the psychological complexity of an artist's life story. And perhaps I should not be too anxious to effect a quick denial of all these schitzy associations. Think of the public attention paid to Van Gogh's emotional life. And we read of the unique contribution of his presumed state of mind, how it contributed to the unique quality of his work. And of course, if these speculations contributed to the desire to pay millions of dollars for every one of his paintings, well, who knows? Anyhow, how much liquid chemical assistance did Pollock consume to sustain his breakthrough? But I can't apply any qualities of my drawings to some exotic visitations or some exotic visits acquired using prescriptions recommended by Timothy Leary. So I continue to draw, continue to make drawings and study the masters of drawing, hoping to better train my gaze without any artificial assistance. However, I don't want this last story to be the one that takes up permanent residence in your memory. If someone should ever ask you, who is that guy Rossman? You might answer, oh, him. Yeah, him. He's the guy who makes those skitsy drawings. Well, that's the danger I've stepped into. And if that's your lasting memory, then I've really stepped on my own toes again. So since that might stick longer than anything else I've said today, or anything we've talked about today, it's even more urgent than ever, that you make an appointment to visit the gallery and let Mike and Tina and I correct you about this bonus impression. So call them up, get down to the gallery and see these works for yourself. Make your own judgments and let me know what you think whenever it's convenient for you to do so. And God bless you all. Thank you for showing up today. I deeply appreciate your presence. God bless.
Thank you, Michael. Everyone can feel free to unmute and give Michael a round of applause.
Great, Michael.
Wonderful, Mike.
And to you both, and to all of you.